Who's wrong and who's wronger? In this corner, followed by millions, James the Exploding Unicorn Breakwell. And in that corner, ignored by millions, Steve Da Shrinko Levers.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Wrong and Wronger, the podcast where James Breakwell screws up the intro every single time we try to get rolling, and he'll probably tell you that there's some weird cockamamie story to the contrary, but he's got a big ego, and so just let him go with the lie, because it masks a truth that is far darker and far more personal for the unicorn.
How many seconds did we get to the last broadcast before we had to stop? How many seconds, Steve?
I believe as soon as it was mentioned that the broadcast had to be stopped, one of us who was chagrined by the whole thing, possibly crestfallen, blurted out, "That only took a half a second to screw up."
So
the names have been changed to protect the guilty, James. Come on.
did you drop your phone in the toilet? Did you get attacked by a rattlesnake? What happened on your end to prompt all that?
Well, first of all, that would require an admission of guilt on my part. I can only speculate as to what happened to screw this up on your part. My guess is that because you haven't done this for a week and you have many things on your busy mind, that you hit record, and you just correct me if any of this is wrong. You counted down, which we did successfully, as we've done hundreds of times in the past. And then, to get things really kicked off, you hit the stop record button, which was red and blinking and just seemed to invite your forefinger. I don't know if that seems reasonable, James.
I think that was your unconscious mind, your reptile brain, trying to protect the conscious part of your mind, which has made the terrible decision to record here with me today. But you know what? I admire you for almost, not quite, accepting guilt. So good for you. I feel like this is positive character development.
I'm not sure if that was a compliment, but it is on brand for Breakwell. But I didn't even ask you because of all of the shenanigans going on regarding the opening of this podcast. But how are you doing, James?
You ask that every time. Do you care about the answer? Are you fishing for our hook where we go off on a tangent? You ask for my status. You know who I am. You know how I am. I exist in a state of stasis, unchanging for all time. And yet you hurl me this softball every week in the hopes that I will divert us down the road to insanity. But I think that this week the only insanity is in your life and not mine.
How is my life insane? I don't have enough content to fill an entire newsletter once, twice, sometimes 10 times a week based on the volume of mail I get from you. So no, my life, the stasis in my life is homeo.
If you look at everything on your timeline right now, it's like, boy, 37 and a half days ago, I almost died. 38 and a half days ago, it's like it's this morbid anti-countdown. But also, I tried to make communication with you, and you were flying back from somewhere. I was like, what are you doing flying right now? He said, well, I haven't seen this or that lost relative in 75 years, and I had to go right now. I mean, you're all over the globe doing your anti-death countdown. You got a lot of stuff going on. I feel like it needs to be brought out in the open.
First of all, the tweet that you're referring to happened roughly 6 minutes ago. So I am flattered that, like a fangirl, you hang out. You probably have your alerts button to notify you whenever I post. And the one about I got to go to work next week, that's the one you're talking about, right?
No, I didn't even see that one. It's just like a whole genre of tweets for you. How many anti-countdown tweets have you done? It's gotta be 100 by now.
Well, so there's three main milestones that all have the meter running on them. One was the heart attack. 2 was the surgery, and 3 was my return home from the hospital. And so every week I try to hit 2 of those and think of something unique or funny or compelling to say about them. And the one that I did 6 minutes ago, although it'll be like 2 days and 6 minutes ago when this goes live, but it's that I've been home as of today, which we're recording on Monday. I've been home for exactly 11 weeks today. And in 1 week from today, I have to go back to my real job. And that has created a certain consternation on my part.
So first of all, are you telling me, your podcast co-host, that this podcast is not your main source of income?
Well, first of all, the fact that you and I have any body weight to speak of whatsoever kind of tells we both have incomes that are independent of this podcast. Only one of us, though, has been working since the 11-week ago mark started the countdown. So one of us has been raking in the dough, and the other one of us has been eating generic oatmeal from Piggly Wiggly 3 meals a day. But I'm not going to say which of us is which. All I'm saying is one of us has to go from full-time job being health and recovery to full-time job being an amiable shrink that is stamping out mental illness one patient at a time.
This was probably the longest you've been off work. I'm going to say since you were in maybe
11.
11. I was just, okay, did you work through college?
Yes.
Wow, that was a million years ago, and that's not even that much of an exaggeration. Like, they didn't have electricity back then. They didn't have fire back then. The wheel was about ready to get invented, and there you were, 11-year-old Steve Olivas going down into the coal mines of Wisconsin. So good on you. But you've had 11 weeks off, and I assume you've produced much great art. You've advanced the human spirit, and you've completed epic works worthy of this time of leisure.
Or I have produced several episodes of this podcast with you, which I'm not sure if that advances the human spirit or if it actually diminishes most humans' will to live, particularly the ones 3 that listen to this show. But I have begun another book with another rock star, so that is in its 3rd week of completion. And no, that's it. Otherwise, my day consists of 3 days a week I get up, go to cardiac rehab. The other 4 days a week I get up, I do God knows what. That time just kind of goes into a vacuous black hole of nothingness. And then I go for a walk, and then I take a shower, and I eat dinner, and eventually go to bed.
This is good, but I think that's kind of the general human experience. We act like, boy, if I had more time, I would do such great things, and the truth is we just wouldn't. I mean, that happened when everybody was home during the lockdowns. It's like, boy, the human spirit, if we were just home more, we'd do all these great things, and really everybody just kind of hung out and played on their phones and watched Netflix. Like, there was no great upswell in human culture. We are what we are. We do no more than we are forced to do to avoid starvation, and that's about it.
Well, you and I put out 3 or 4 episodes of this podcast, so we have obviously left our thumbprint in the wet cement of the human condition.
However, we are contributing to the deterioration of the human condition because anyone who watches this is just staring at their phone. So if we're productive, we spend exactly 25 minutes recording this with no editing, and then 10 people watch it, we have destroyed 250 minutes of productive time. God help us if we get 100 views or 1,000 views because somebody has a heart attack. That we are actively dragging our species backwards. And if we keep this up, we could bring about the collapse of civilization.
Wow. Again, leaving our thumbprint in the wet cement of humanity. I mean, Attila the Hun, I don't think anyone wanted to invite the guy to a barbecue, but everyone's heard his name, right? They will be they will be cursing the names James Breakwell and Steve Olivas someday. And that was like kung fu fighting. Everyone's going to do it.
So did you at least achieve any unproductive milestones? Maybe finish off some Netflix series or get some DVDs from the library. Watch something that you told yourself you would never have time for in your life. And now that you were just kind of being a bump on a log on the couch, that you thought, you know what, now is the time, since my time has even less value than normal.
Boy, I think I mentioned on this podcast during the heart attack episode that I was making my way through the TV series Monk when I can't sleep at night. Mm-hmm. And did you know there were like over 130 episodes of that TV show that were made? And I've gotten through all but like 1.5 seasons. So there's probably 15 left that are on my docket. So I've almost made it through Monk.
We actually tried that as a family show to eat during dinner, because like any normal family, we don't talk to each other. We all sit on one side of the table like we're in that Last Supper painting, staring at the TV, and it drowns out the sound of our chewing. And we tried it. We made it through some episodes, and sometimes the kids were into it, and sometimes they weren't. It was not my favorite show in the world, but I could see how you would be, because he's an investigator, but before that, was he a psychologist, or am I misremembering that? What was his expertise before he went into crime?
You're not misremembering completely. You're confabulating a little bit. He has always been a detective, but a main part of the show is little snippets of him seeing his psychologist.
Okay, that's what it is. He goes to his psychologist. So the psychologist, of course, is the real hero of the show, and I'm sure there's no projection going on whatsoever.
Well, in fairness, God, how is this for art imitates life? You've stumbled onto something, James Breakwell, because the man who played the therapist, Stanley Camel, died of a heart attack during the show.
Oh.
Like he died during there were 9 seasons. I believe he died during season 7 of a heart attack. So they had to replace him with a different psychologist for the last 2 seasons.
Did he have an episode where he said, boy, I sure am having some suspicious chest pains, but I'm definitely not going to the doctor?
Why do you do that? What's wrong with you? I mean, who hurt you that you have to lash out all the time like this?
It did. It gave us our single greatest moment on this podcast. Although people, because of the way we formatted it, like people don't even find it funny. They just kind of find it horrifying. I put the 2 episodes together. So we got two different situations, and you predicted one of them, and I didn't think it was going to be real, but it was there. So we had the people who knew the full story, who knew you had a heart attack and knew you survived, and they just watched with horror at that first part as you ignored all the symptoms. And then there were people, I guess, because they knew we were going to do that. Then there were other people who I guess knew you had a heart attack, but they didn't know about anything beforehand. So that first episode starts out, and there's no acknowledgement of the heart attack. And people were so confused. Like, well, what is this? What's happening? And then you start gradually dropping these references in like a slowly unfolding horror movie. Like, wait a minute. What is going on here? So yeah, I guess
Don't go into the house.
Yeah, there are some people out there who like get this podcast without like us tweeting out a direct link to it. There are some people who come to it organically. They've got it in a feed or something, and those were the people who you tried to help. You tried to give like a 4-sentence explanation in the title for the episode, and I said no, and I regret nothing.
You regret nothing, regardless of consequences. Well, that's the beauty of you.
Well, you could have put it in the description, which would be more reasonable for 3 or 4 sentences. But people, if it just pops up and auto downloads on your phone, it might just autoplay in your playlist. You're not going to see that anyway.
Yeah.
But in that case, you're also not going to see the title. So your obnoxious title would not have helped anyone anyway. But it would actually. I say this as somebody who has had the longest book titles on the face of the earth. This is really the pot calling the kettle black. But I stand by the chaos I caused.
My last book was 2 words long for the title, although I didn't come up with it.
Which one was that?
MTV Famous.
Oh well, do you not count MTV as 3 words though?
It's a single acronym. Would you consider SCUBA or What's another one that we use commonly?
That's true. I suppose if contractions count as one word, acronyms count as one word as well. I feel like it's cheating the spirit of the challenge. My books, on the other hand, have titles that are a full paragraph long, which is probably why I make about as much money writing books as I do doing podcasts. So maybe that's not the way to go. Maybe the 2-word title is where it's at.
Have you ever been coached out of that by somebody, or do they just take what you put down and go, good job, boss?
They actually, they tend to like my titles. Oh, there was one. I could not come up with a title for the memoir-ish book. And I think it was, I maybe proposed How to Be a Man, but I didn't know what to do after that, and it wasn't clear it was sarcastic, and my agent was the one who suggested How to Be a Man, whatever that means, and I continued on with the conversation as we were struggling, and we were in like a multi-person voice chat, and we're all just like, okay, that's the title, and that was, we took no further ideas after that. We're like, okay, that clearly, the one parenthetical solved that problem. For all the other ones, yeah, like even the one, How to Survive Ostrich Attacks, Accidental Time Travel, and anything else that might happen on an average Tuesday, I pitched that, and they thought it was a good idea. And now they no longer publish my books. So maybe there's a connection there. Maybe when I have a bad idea, you should tell me no, because, well, from a humor standpoint, or maybe even an artistic standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. For moving a lot of copies of books standpoint, maybe don't do that. And speaking of which, I have a book coming out June 18th, and you should totally buy it. And it does have a much shorter title, only 4 words, I think. So that's a very reasonable number of words.
What is the book? That's your fiction book, right?
Yeah, it's a sequel. So if you want to read that one, you got to go read the one before it. Although it has a lead in at the start, so I guess you could skip it if you really wanted to. Yeah, it's The Gods of Spencer Island. The Gods of Spencer Island. That's 5 words. That of got me. It's part of the first book was The Chosen 12, which is 3 if you count the. So yeah, it's the sequel to
so
that.
On average, you got 4.
Yeah, that's so. I mean, yeah, it got me to a sequel. So maybe every time I'll just add another word or 2 until I get back up to those 75-word titles, and then this publisher is also done with me. That'll be the arc of my career, just progressively longer titles, and I'll cut it back down to 1 or 2 words and just kind of go. But anyway, that will be out there. And to the 4 people who listened to this and who weren't scared away by the misleading title that made you confused about whether Steve was alive or dead, you could buy that. And enjoy all 5 words of the title. You don't have to read the book. Just read the title and then put it on your shelf where it looks pretty. And somebody will be like, what's that book? And you'd be like, The Gods of Spencer Island. And then you will have been done with all the knowledge you achieved from that book. That's all you need. You just got to read the title, put it on the shelf, you're good. And then I make my dollar in royalties.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a good system. It's a good system.
And you left $4 to match all the words. The Gods of Spencer Island, who are real men, whatever that means, because they survived a zombie attack.
This is progressive. This is I had to advocate to put a girl on the cover. Well, there was a girl on the cover of the first one. The main character is a girl, and so then on the cover of this one, they had 2 boys fighting. I'm like, well, that doesn't really make sense. And so they took the hair on one of the boys and they made it longer. I'm like, all right, I guess that counts now. So now it's a girl and a boy fighting.
There's a boy beating up a girl?
No, they're sword fighting. It's mutual combat here. Come on, Steve. Also,
Wait,
she
other?
she is the better sword. What? You have not even the vaguest idea what the first book is about, do you? You can't even pretend. At least I know your books are about rock stars or dairy farms, and I have purchased multiple ones of your books. But you can't even fathom a guess. What would your guess, without any context? What would you guess The Gods of Spencer Island is about?
That it is deities that are in infiltrating the minds and infecting them of the youth and causing them to have violent outbursts of rage and aggression. And this is what is it called when a book is set in a certain time period? An anachronism? It's one of those kinds of books. God, I can't think of the word. But so anyway, guns haven't been invented yet, and so the boys and girls, because of all the sexual tension that builds up, they can't control the rage. And rather than move toward each other in a loving, romantic way, like when a daddy and mommy love each other and then they lay close together and babies are born, that they take out their swords, which are phallic symbols, and they fight that way.
Well, I need you to do me a favor. I need
Yeah.
you, and it's going to be the easiest favor you ever did for me. I need you to not read my book ever. Just don't open it. Just keep that version of the book in your head forever, and that will be your canon for the kind of book I write. And to everybody else, not a single thing he said happens in the book. So you are safe that however terrible you think my book is, the one specific scenario he outlined is not what happens. So you are safe. You are safe from that one specific eventuality.
James, if you need me to punch up your storyboard or anything, you let me know, because I've got ideas, man.
Man, this one's weird too. It was they had trouble getting to the book because I don't know, the timeline and the editor and stuff, everything's compressed. Apparently, I didn't write the only book in the world. There are other books coming out, which is I find vaguely offensive. So anyway, and then they got the edits got back to me late. I got it back to them late, and then or on time, but late because they got it to me late. And then when I got it back to them, it was over Christmas, and then they just had to publish. So like we were really stressing out to get this thing done, and we did get it done. But because of that, like almost nobody has read this. Like I've read it, my editors read it, the proofreaders read it. That's it. My wife hasn't read it. Nobody else has read it. And there's cool things in there. I'm like, man, this is a really cool thing that happens. I really like this. I don't know if a single other person in the world is going to like that thing. Like well, I don't know. I'm not going to make any sales off this podcast anyway. It doesn't matter. But I just I don't have any context because like the way the edits were going through, like the editor had a time to be like, let's take a book that's not that good and like let's make it a better book, but there wasn't like time to go through and nitpick cool things. So this is probably a scenario like, where I get my paragraph long titles out there that like maybe if we had more runway, she would have been like gone back through and been like, boy, I mean, the book makes sense now within its own logic, but this thing that you think is really cool, well, I think it is the stupidest thing on the face of the earth. And while it doesn't directly defy logic, maybe we should insert literally any other thing. Like there's
wow, and is that thing a linchpin to the whole story coming together?
No, there's a part like there's these animals. They're like hybrids of goats and sheep and llama, and they've got some other characteristics. And there's one who like I wrote a one-line like throwaway joke with one of these things being a jerk and headbutting somebody, and that thing just kept coming back, and all of a sudden, like by the end of the book, like this thing is like somehow survived like 50 chapters. This thing is still here. It keeps coming back. It's got a name. It's got a personality, and it's still there. And then I finally kill it off right before the climax. And then I was like, boy, it would have been cool if that thing was still alive. And then I thought, wait a minute. I'm writing this book. And so I went back, undid its death, made it alive again, and brought it in for the finale. And I read that part, and it just fills my heart with joy. I get goosebumps. I love this thing. It comes down like one paragraph where this stupid thing that wasn't even supposed to exist, and it's like right there in the middle of the action. And if I never accomplish anything else in writing books, I got that in there. And I have no idea if another human being will feel the same way. My editor read it after tearing apart so many other things I did with that book, made no comment whatsoever on that passage, went through again, made no comment on it a second time. So I don't know. It's just there. It made it through, and you can read it. Not you. You've been forbidden. But the person out there who's also not listening to this podcast, somebody buys these books. Someone will read this, and they'll just go, huh. And then I'll never hear from them either. That is the nature of writing for the void, Steve. You just throw the words out there, and they are gone.
Well, two things before we wrap here today. One of them is that I don't have to read the book, James, because I have dazzled you with my spot-on, it's like I'm an oracle, that I already just almost telepathically knew the storyline, the plot. Yeah. And so you had to deny it just to save a little bit of dignity on your part, but no, I got it. And then number two, I will say, I have to pause for a second and think if I need to be complimentary to James Breakwell this late in the episode when I have no time to undo it. But it really does show from a writing standpoint that you created a strong storyline and strong characters, because people think that you are sort of the puppet master of what happens, but if you create a world that sort of has rules, expectations, and strong characters, you basically just watch what happens in your head, and then you write down what you see. Like the characters kind of have their own life, and you don't have to decide how they're going to interact. Their characters interact, their personalities interact. And so the fact that you invented a funny one that headbutts, and that character just kept popping up, like, that's because he was supposed to pop up. That was well crafted.
There you go. My monstrosity was always meant to be, and if that's not a metaphor for wrong and wronger, I don't know what is.
Well, on that high note, I'm going to walk our monster selves out of here because we've got children to scare. So until we meet again, until we sit down and do this little thing we call torture, this is Steve Olivas, Dr. Steve for James the Exploding Author Breakwell, saying thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Don't live in a world where you're going to get headbutted 50 times, die, come back from the dead, and finish out the race. And I can't remember where I was in my sentence, but two wrongs can make a right.